My name's William Henry Bradley. I was born in Calgary in 1940. Moved to Edmonton when I was 1 year old, then moved to Vancouver when I was 10 or 11. And here I am today. I used to hang around with Owen Gill, and he was one of the best junior players in junior, a top goal scorer, and there's 4 or 5 other guys, Gary Stevens, Ron Bodner, George Longman, Dickie Crompton, and I'm sure I've missed a couple, but they were pretty all outstanding players. And I wasn't a bad hockey player because I come from the prairies when I was about 11. I didn't start playing lacrosse till I was 17. And not playing for a team, but down at the lacrosse box, and that was where everyone hung around that played lacrosse and was in sports, and Confederation Park. And I just picked up from what I used to watch, and Gordy Gimple, and he's a few years older than me, from North Burnaby. They used to have, I think they're called the Rockies, they would practice down in the lacrosse, Pete Cowie and Gimp and whatever, I call him Gimp. But so just watching them, and showing me a few things in you know, how to score and whatever, and I practice with my stick a lot. And hockey and lacrosse are pretty similar sports, other than one's on ice. You got to be a good skater, of course. And when I came here, that was going to be my goal, is to play in the NHL. But only 2 ice rinks in those days was Kerrisdale Arena and the Forum. And I used to get up at 5:30 in the morning, take the bus to Kerrisdale Arena. That's a long ways. And I wasn't getting the ice time. So lacrosse, I liked it because the skill thing with your stick, and I like the physical aspect of the game. I finally, when Mickey Meslow had a team over in South Van Legion around Fraser and 41st, he heard about me, and with Sowen and Bodner and a couple other guys, we went over and played for his team. So a couple of years later, I'm a year older than those guys, so the next year I couldn't play if I went over there, and somehow somebody figured it out that well, let's get Bill Dickinson to coach our team, and we'll have a team in Burnaby. So we did, and we won the Western Championship that year and went back east and played in the Minto Cup in Port Credit. The next year they brought our whole team up to the Intercity League or whatever. We only won 3 games, but I understand that Barkley and Sepka and these guys from over in Newton or whatever that went to the Salmon Belt has only won 3 games that year. So we had the nucleus of a pretty good team, and we're all just out of junior and whatever, you know. Norburn Athletics, and our trainer was a boxing coach, young Tommy Burns. His name was Tom Delorier. He used to run us like boxers do around Confederation Park, 10 times around, and a few of us would get into the ring with some of his fighters, and didn't do too bad for 2 rounds, but the 3rd round they kind of kicked your butt, you know, because they know how to pace himself and all the other shit and whatever. So anyhow, we went back east, and we lost in 6 games. But it was a great experience. 4 days on the train there and 4 days back. And so the next year, here we are, we go to the Intercity League. which was a big step. And like I said, we only won 3 games, but it was quite an experience. I think for all of us, you know, in those days, the Carlings, I mean, they were a tough team with a lot of tough guys, and you know, I thought, well, I don't know whether I could ever play, and you know, I'm not good enough. And then we played them and whatever, and Chisholm used to threaten me all the time and whatever, because I played hockey at the Forum, at the P&E, and he always said, "You play against me and up the thing, I'm going to knock your head off." Well, I found that they're not as tough as I thought they were, you know, but they're a heck of a lacrosse team. There's no doubt about that. So then Victoria came after to pick up some of us guys that played on the team. And so I went over there with Sohan. He was actually my best friend, and I kind of looked after him a bit too. Somebody was roughing him up or whatever, you know. And anyhow, they treated us like gold when we went over there, like I thought I was in a Hollywood movie. You know, you're walking down the street, everybody's waving at you. There's a doorman's clothiers. What do you need? A suit? You need this? You go to the pub. You couldn't buy a beer. Anyhow, the only problem is we got to know all the Seagulls by their first name. You know, taking the ferry over there all the time. But that was a great experience, and we got treated real well. And then when the Adanacs wanted to form a team in Coquitlam, that was a chance for, you know, we'd be back at home and play with some of the guys that couldn't make that league then, because there was like 1 or 2 guys could make Senior A or the Intercity League on any team. And a lot of the Burnaby guys followed us there, and the ones that could stay and made it and went. And then Gimple, they were allowed to take 2 players off every team they move, and they took Gimple and Alec Carey, and he coached the team. Well, they took Barkley and Mike Gates, who's, in my mind, probably the best all-around lacrosse player to ever play the game. Used to win the scoring, he never was on the power play. They didn't even hang a sweater up in Coquitlam when he was alive. You know, he died too young. And he just retired. I think he was 62 or 63. And they talked about it, and we said, well, yeah, the guy's an automatic. You know, you can look at his stats. In junior, same thing. He wasn't even on the power play, and the guy won the scoring race, you know. And who could get the ball off him when he was ragging it? Christ, he could shoot from center and score sometimes. But no, he's a great player. He had, you know, he didn't look after himself like he should and whatever, but other than that, as far as lacrosse goes. And I played against a lot of the great players back east too when I was there, and in Portland, and against Beyonda when he played for Nanaimo and New Westminster. And then we went from there, we got Barkley and Ivan Stewart. And I think Ken Audie came there the first year too. And he was great for us young guys. And not Barkley so much, but Ken Audie was. Then of course, Gimp, who's still coaching, call him Gimp, Gordy Gimple. He still coaches in the WLA, I think. I haven't been to a game for a couple of years, but I know when I went, I'd always say, Gimp, how come they're doing this and that? Because that isn't how you coach. He says, well, Bill, you can't tell these guys. You tell them that, and they don't do what you tell them. And I said, well, if I was a coach, the head coach, and he said, well, the head coach doesn't jump on them like they should. I said, well, that's pretty crazy, because he has affected my career a lot, showing me how to score when I got a breakaway, because I could get in, not easy, but to get a, and in those days, you used to probably try to sneak around the outside so you didn't get killed, especially if you're playing against Vancouver. But he taught me a lot, and then he moved me from forward to defense, because I was a good checker. And that worked out good for me, because in those days you only had two sets of defensemen and three sets of forward line, so you're getting on the floor more too, right? And the guy, he's got such a passion for the game, but what a great coach. And I played for the great Jim Bishop. I'm sure you've heard of him. 71, 72. He put the word out that he wanted me to come back east. And very few guys from here go back east. In fact, I don't know of any. So I thought, 7 Minto Cups. These guys were, and I watched them when they were here. But now it's called the Windsor Warlocks. But at that time too, most of those guys on the team were ex-Green Gales. So I thought, well, I get homesick when I go across the Patella Bridge. But I thought, yeah, and I was married and separated then, so I had 2 kids, so I would miss them. But I thought, I'd like to learn more, and see just how those guys became so great. Because they weren't all-star fancy stick handlers and whatever. They were like a unit. And disciplined. And every one of those guys, man, what a treat. I love those guys. They weren't, they had a job to do. You had a job, and that's what you did. No heroes, guys from shooting anywhere. They always had Jim Higgs, when I was there, one of the great Oshawa Green Gales. John Davis wasn't, he's from Peterborough, but that's another story in 74. But yeah, those guys come to a practice and come from Oshawa and drive 5-6 hours to a practice and then drive back. In the Pro League in 74, he was coaching Toronto, I think. Or maybe, yeah, it was, I think then, because he went to Montreal in 75 when Fergie was having the bad time with his partner and whatever. But those guys would lose. And I think I was in, where was I then? They would have to, after the game, he'd have them out in the parking lot for an hour. Working out, running and doing, and like his workouts weren't easy. So I can remember in 68 when Salt, I think they're called the Burrards then, they came to Windsor, and it's it's one of the highest humidity factors in North America. And I know why. I mean, people are in the stands just soaked in perspiration. There were 2 or 3 guys that couldn't play for the Burrards, and Salt was one of them, I think, that I can remember. He was so dehydrated and exhausted, And Bishop, you're going, practices, you go full out. You don't dog it, whatever. And I come back there, he wanted me to come back before Christmas in 68, and I says, no, I can't, I got my family, my kids. I'll come back right after Christmas. So anyhow, I did. and there was 2-month training camp at the university there. Well, in those days we didn't have the Tupperware sticks. You know, we had the leather and wood sticks, and there was like over 100 guys out to training camp. Well, I tried to get lost under, you know, in the crowd and put my stick under my, because a cat gut would get wet and stretch, you know. And of course you have 2 sticks, but it isn't like now you can pick up one of those Tupperware jobs in 5 minutes. It's the pocket's that deep or whatever, you know, where the leather and the wood's a whole different story. But we're practicing out there in the mud and like it's unreal. You'd have to see it to believe it. Not many guys could hack it, but I knew why his teams were so good. To me, they're like, and I'm not a cook or a baker, but they're like a cake. You got to have all the right ingredients. And he had them. The guys from, some guys were just almost like an egg and spooner, but they could get the ball, make a nice pass, and they broke out of their end just like, it was incredible. What an experience. Well, they treated me pretty good there too, eh? I lived there where the Oshawa guys come to the game and practices. And you know how far Oshawa is from Windsor. Yeah. And some of them, a couple of them were from Huntsville, and that's where Beyond is from. Yes. So that, I think there were 2-3 guys that were living in Windsor. Mito Martinello, he was kind of a spare on the team. And I worked there because I had to send money back home in that. And another guy, there's only one other guy that worked on the team. Higgs and I were hung around quite a bit. A guy named Jimmy Higgs. He's a all-time great Green Gale. But he didn't work. He didn't like work either, I don't think. But so after work, I lived in, these people wanted me to stay at their place, this gal and her boyfriend. So I had a room and they treated me like gold, and Bishop was the manager of the Detroit Red Wings then, so I used to go to their games and with 1 or 2 guys from Windsor. But I was treated pretty good there. I was the playing coach of, I was a coach of the Quebecois. Then Fergie kept on harping, he wanted me to play. So I was still and I was the manager too, because Fergie wasn't there half the time. So I had to arrange all the things at the motel that we stayed, the Belvedere Motel, organize all that. Then the coaching, and I used to run with the guys. And then finally, when he got me to play, then he stood behind the bench and coached. And I imagine some of his assistants or whatever helped with the management level and whatever, right? Yeah, that was, and flying, we're on, I think, DC-3s or whatever. It looked like the door onto the plane was going to fall off. The wind was coming in the thing and whatever. The delay, and hot, no air conditioning, and you had the humidity back there. I don't know if you ever stayed back there or lived back there. The humidity's incredible. Worse in Windsor and Maryland, but Montreal is still bad too. But this was like real pro, not like it is today. That isn't pro. The guys can't even practice once a week. You might not even see another. How do you practice your power play? How do you practice your short man? As far as money goes, I think I was making around 12 grand for the whole season. And some of the ordinary players were making around 6 or 7. The next year in Maryland, I was making, I think, around 16 or 17. And apparently Paul Suggett, he played there too. He's one of the highest paid players, about 3 or 4 guys. They're making around 18. And I came home. Ed and I, we bought a car, and I came home with $2,000 in my pocket, and we drove home. And that's all I had left. But mind you, I was sending money back home to my kids, you know. But every day, if you're on the road, you practice every day. I think it was the 34 or 38 game schedule. I forget what it was. But that was pro. And we lived in that area. So, and the people, we'd have people like they do with the Seahawks. There'd be half a dozen or better. They take time off of their job, and especially we're on the East Coast there in Syracuse and Rochester and Boston. They would follow us to the games, to watch the games. I mean, lacrosse back there is like, and in Maryland, there's a couple of guys on our team that went to Maryland and played field lacrosse, so I used to go to when we had a day off or something, I'd go there with them when I was in Maryland. And the fans, just to watch a field lacrosse game, like, I don't know, maybe 15, 20,000 people or better. And I remember Randy White, that played for Dallas. I met him in the bar there, and because I've always been a football fan. And he liked lacrosse better than football. But you know how much money he made playing for Dallas. I mean, now he's probably wishing he was born later or whatever. But yeah, it's and these guys that are field lacrosse players, I mean, Schreiber and Bobby Shaw, and he's one of the first guys to have that Tupperware stick there. And I think Jim Bishop got into it later, and then the Gates got into it. But he was trying to get guys to use it and that. Well, those guys weren't bad, and they were all-American field lacrosse players. But the big thing is they didn't know how to check. And in those days, if you didn't know how to check, and your check scored more goals than you, what good are you out on the floor, you know? So, but anyhow, great athletes and whatever. But well, even today, look at the stick checking. You know, you can't cross-check in field lacrosse. That's about what. And John Davis, who is with me in Montreal, who's one of the best to ever play the game. Not a big guy, but a fantastic player, and not a bad checker. Like, let's say him and Kevin Alexander. If Kevin Alexander, they hadn't have put him stay past center. I remember Chris Hall's the guy that started that. And just go hang down around the net and wait for the ball, because Alexander's incredible. Probably one of the best goal scorers of all time. But he never had to play both ends of the floor, you know. And apparently he's a good baseball player and this and whatever. But John Davis is a great checker too. Not a great checker, but a good checker. And unreal with his stick and that. Well, Bobby Allen, some of them Peterborough guys are pretty good with their sticks. Well, yeah, and that's the way the game was played. And I coached minor for 10 years or better, and senior, or inner city there for, I don't know, I can't keep track of the years, but none of my teams, they had to play both ends. But I think it came on at the end of this offense-defense. And all my minor teams never played offense-defense. I'd put on my get-the-ball team if the game was close at the end. Or my short man play was mostly my get-the-ball teams. And if I had my good face-off man, I'd have him taking the face-off. But, yeah, no, I don't. Well, they hold the game up. Guy was telling me the other day, he heard I played lacrosse and whatever. I said, yeah, a few years back. And he said, well, I thought it was supposed to be the fastest game on 2 feet. I said, yeah, well, it is, and the guys are a little on the bigger side now, and they're probably working out a lot better, more and whatever, and a lot of these guys are making not bad money. You know, it used to cost me money to play. So, and the coach. So he said, well, they stop the game, these guys run off, these other guys run on. Meanwhile, what's going on then, some guys, they run the ball, take it all right down the other end, and then all of a sudden they come off. Now there's only 12 seconds on the shot clock. I said, yeah, they should have come off right off the bat, not take the ball down the other end, because their coach is telling them, no, you get off the ball and give it to Jimmy here. He's going to go out and take the shots. Well, how do you put 5 offensive guys on the floor at the same time that all want the ball, and they shoot with 20 seconds left on the shot clock from way out? You know, so no, I don't like that either. So, and a lot of other people don't. You don't see many old timers going to the games these days because of that. Well, Terry McKibben, his best friend.
John Ferguson's best friend?
Yeah, who just died about a year ago. And one of my good friends, Terry McKibben, because when I was younger playing hockey, he was a year or two older. They used to bring me up to play, but I wasn't that big then, eh? And not that big now, but I mean, I used to drink 1 or 2 beer to try to gain weight. I was pretty skinny, so by the time I got about 16, working in construction, I built up muscle, had a universal gym, and ate and whatever, so I worked my way up to about 180, 85, around in there. So, but anyhow, we were, I think Terry, and the East End, that's where Fergie's from. I'm from North Burnaby. And Terry's from the East End. He lives right on Boundary, used to live on Boundary Road, right on the border. So I got to know them good, and Fergie was a goaltender in lacrosse. Anyhow, he ended up playing for Nanaimo, and I think I don't know the stats, I'd have to look him up, but I think he was on the point in the power play. Tommy McVie was on the left-hand shooter. Skip Mackay, another East Ender. They had a heck of a power play. But Fergie was almost an egg and spooner, you know, but he played the point. And being a good athlete, he caught on quick, and he got so that he let a shot go. He won the scoring anyhow. And of course, when you got Skip Mackay on the shooters and Tommy McVie on the other side, that doesn't hurt. But that's how I got to know him. Now, we were playing for Victoria then, and a few times, same as Larry McNabb, he played for Victoria when we were playing for Portland. You know, I didn't really take it easy on anybody, even in practices. I always said, practice like it's a game, with my philosophy, eh? So I hit him a couple of times pretty hard in that, and of course, he told me that he liked me, so he didn't kill me, you know. Larry McNabb told me the same thing. He said, if I didn't like you, Bradley, I'd kill you. And I said, oh, thanks, and give him another shot, you know. But I would have just ran in and hung on as hard as I could, you know. Yeah, he's playing hockey back east. I think he played for Cleveland. And then he went to probably is in the American Hockey League. I didn't follow his whole thing then. Montreal needed a tough guy. And he was the answer. They tell me, Henry Richard told me when we were in 74, when we were used their dressing room. Nobody gets to use the Montreal Canadiens dressing room. All their great pitches are on the wall. And a few of them, like Henry Richard, became good friends with him. We go down to his bar, John Davis and I, and guys would kill to sit with him. You know, how do you guys get to sit with Henry? How would he make the time to sit with you guys for half an hour or an hour or whatever, eh? But some of the other guys like Savard, Serge Savard. anyhow, he liked Fergie too and hung around, and a couple other guys hung around our lacrosse team. But he used to say, yeah, Fergie would come in the dressing room and throw garbage cans, kick this, and do it like, I mean, all the guys are hiding back in their stalls or whatever, eh? But, and I never liked Montreal. And I watch hockey Saturday night every game. And, you know, the goaltender reach out to get the puck or something, he'd chop his hand off trying to loosen up the puck, eh? No, not really, because we usually, on a Saturday night, we usually only got Montreal games or Toronto games. Eh? It isn't like now you get all these other games. And you know they needed a tough guy, and it doesn't matter who go, he'd score the odd goal too, you know. But a lot of guys were scared of him. Montreal wasn't known for a team with a lot of guts and whatever, eh? So, yeah, no, I thought, but I don't like Montreal, like I told you, because they always win. You know, every year they seem to win, right? And I'm always for the underdog. And anyhow, I thought just being looking after guys and whatever, who wants to fight him? You know, Howe probably wouldn't, I don't think he'd want to fight Howe either, because I mean, I shook Howe's hand when I was in Windsor. You know, Windsor's like, here, you cross the river, you go, and I went, Bishop was the manager of the Detroit Red Wings, and Harkness was the coach, and he was a hockey coach in one of the universities or whatever. So I was in their lounge every game that they played over there pretty well, if I could get there, with a couple of other guys from Windsor that lived in Windsor, because most of the guys on the team weren't from Windsor. But yeah, Howe, I don't know if you ever got to shake his hand or you're close to the guy. His hands and his wrists are like, and it's like grabbing a pole, you know. And I could see why, and they used to tell me, like, he would let a wrist shot go. They didn't take a lot of slap shots in those days. You put the stick behind his back and go like this, snap it, harder than most guys could let a slap shot go. But if you ever shook his hand, you'd know, eh? Well, we had a great coach with Gordy, and another thing, that guy is like left or right hand on a breakaway. I think there's nobody better. I keep on telling people even today that the best line I've ever seen, and I've seen at different lines, because I was back east for 3-4 years and here, Usselman and Alec Carey. You know, now they got 5 offensive guys. Alec Carey go in with the ball, and he could score. He had the crazy fake shot, which he faked a lot of guys out. And Usselman's 6'5" or 6", and Gordy's overhand's his best shot, right or left, and he can let a sidearm. And the overhand's your best shot anyhow, to be accurate, because you either shoot high or you can shoot low, and that goalie has to worry about that. Yeah, we had Greg coaching, Ken Audie. He used to be, I was probably a bit of a hothead in those days, and Ken used to have to give me a pep talk with Alec Carey, and I'd say, yeah, okay, yeah. And we had a lot of young guys, and of course we had Mike Gates and Charlie Saunders. Those were the only 2 guys that made the Salmon Bellies when that powerhouse team they had. Because he used to beat us by 7 goals a game, and we used to beat everyone else, and we had the toughest team by far. But like even today, those guys, well, I don't know if you watch hockey, I guess when there's Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, how they work together, and then whoever they get put with them and whatever. Well, like the Sedins when they had Burroughs working with them. They were magic, you know. And they weren't hogs, and they didn't all want to have the same. They want a shot, and they would work the ball from behind, guy cut through the middle, whatever. And then they put two good defensemen like John Servey or somebody in Vancouver, Peter Black, or guys like that. I mean, they were pretty awesome. So we had a lot of young guys. The two guys that we didn't have was Gary Stevens. He went to Vancouver, and he's a heck of a lacrosse player. And who else? I think the first year, Bodner went over there too, eh? And the next year, well, when we all went there, Bodner came. Bodner was one of my best friends, so he came with me when I went to the Adanacs. Gary stayed over there. They're both got in the fire department, same as Sohan and Longman and whatever. But we had a good young team, and a lot of them guys were from our first year and senior, you know. So no, it was, if we could have stuck together and whatever, I think we might have won a Mann Cup down the road. We get a couple of the guys like me. I had to work in construction, and I was looking after a couple of projects, and I couldn't take half a week off or whatever. Mike Gates worked for the city, so he could take time off. They were playing for Portland Buckaroos, Tommy McBee, and then there was some of the other players that went, you know, maybe two here, two there, or whatever. But yeah, what they wanted to do the next year was move down there and get 3/4 of your team down there, because but we could still practice good and whatever, because most of us were at home in Coquitlam, right?
So you would
Except one or two.
Coquitlam.
Oh yeah, we work out there and practice and whatever. It was like real pro. We didn't make any money, beer money maybe, and we didn't live there, because if you associate with the people and whatever, they bring their friends and they get attached to the game, and they get more of a liking for it. So, but Beyond and McVie played for Portland Buckaroos, and they're a great sports town, and we'd have been there even the next year, but I don't know back east how things went there. But the owner of our team, Douglas, he didn't want these two doctors. I think they paid for the airfares and, you know, the plane that took us there. It was a charter, of course, and they wanted to have more of a say that went on. And from what I understand, Ralph, he still wanted to control it. And of course, that's another thing with lacrosse now, you know. If they let the guys with the money and had guys that just want to do something for the game instead of wanting their team to just win and do whatever and let players go here and there and whatever, I got my philosophy on that. I thought, well, before I die, I'd like to see guys making 50, 100 grand a year and be real professional, you know. But even 50 grand nowadays is tough for somebody to live married with a family or whatever, right? So so it folded the next year. And I don't know exactly what happened back east, what the deal there was. But that's what happened to us, because unless these doctors are going to pay the bill and whatever, I think we were drawing over 2,000 there. And but you build on that crowd. Now do you go to a game, you're lucky if you say 300. We set a record that year. We only lost 3 games. Montreal had a team in that year too, I think. But no, I can remember that because I thought that was our year that we were going to do it, because we had a powerhouse team. The thing is with us was we didn't have our third line was kind of suspect. It wasn't. And then Westminster brought up these guys, Luthwaite and Goss and Giles and who else? Benny and Winzowski and Goss. I mean, those guys are all damn good players. So they just beat us out, and that's it. And at the same time, we didn't have Joe Como. Joe Como was, he went to play for them next year, and we let him go for nothing. That's my fault, because I was the captain of the team, and Joe only had one friend, that was me. And Gates, he was just choked, because he said, we got to trade him, get something for him, whatever. So Como didn't want to go back east unless somebody's a fireman, and he wanted to get paid. Well, nobody else was getting paid, so we picked up Terry Garrett, who was a good junior goalie and whatever. But if we would have had Como and we had Schweitzer then too, we had the best goaltending duo in probably in the whole league. Pretty disappointing, because you get a chance like that, and we had the goaltending, and we had we had the team, period. I mean, Barkley was playing for us then too, and Ivan Stewart. They were good, but not as good as they were when they played for New West, but still damn good players. Yeah, I think if it wasn't, if Merv was having an off game or whatever, he switched back and forth, we still had the Como. And if you got a good defense, Como stands out there like, I mean, you got to get in to get a shot on him, and you got to be pretty accurate. But they brought up the great players out of their junior system, and for me, actually in '72, I can remember that Bishop put me on the power play, and that was quite a thing for me, because my job was always play defense and whatever, eh? But I scored 4 goals on Como. But I know his weakness, eh? Low on the glove side. So if you can beat your man and get a step on him and don't telegraph and throw it under his glove, he isn't going to get it. So, but yeah, he covers most of the net, and if you have a half-assed good defense, you know, he's going to be tough to beat. And he wasn't a team guy either, and I was his best friend. He used to come over to my house, help me. I'd go over to his house for dinner and whatever. But Merv was in the net. He was hoping he'd play bad. And when he did that, Merv was like that, cheering him on and whatever, eh? I used to get mad at that. Like, I mean, it's a team, buddy, you know. Well, playing with the guys I played with, you know, most of them from Burnaby and my friends, that was neat, eh? But I would say when I went over to Victoria, and Sowen and I, we were treated like kings. I mean, it was unbelievable. I can tell you a little story of when we went over there a few times, and of course, they wanted us to play there, eh? And Hector McNeil was Jim McNeil's dad. He was the manager. And I don't know if you know Jim McNeil, first-class guy. You'd never, and even his brother Don. And Jim, I think he played up in the league there when he was about 17 or 18. And I go to the game at Kerrisdale Arena and go here to Queen's Park or whatever. And what a shot he had, and you know, he didn't. I don't think he checked too much, but they had a good team, Victoria. I think Bionda might have played for them then, because he went to Nanaimo, Victoria. I don't know. Then he ended up in Westminster. But I can remember, and Don Ashby was the coach. And Don Ashby's a funny guy. I didn't learn too much about lacrosse from him, but I had a lot of laughs. You know, he'd come in and call the referee something, you'd end up laughing your head off. So anyhow, we go over there, and we got to make up our mind if we're going to play there. And I mean, I didn't care about the money. I'm thinking about the traveling and whatever. Because, you know, you got to take the ferry over there and whatever. And sometimes they flew us to Nanaimo if they were playing the Nanaimo on a Saturday night. So we're standing there, Sohn and I, and he's nervous. So I said, just, okay, let me do the talking. And Sohn's a good talker. And I'm a good talker. I have a few beer in me, and he can't shut me up, but normally I'm pretty quiet. So Hector and Don, they come out. We're standing. They go back around the corner, and they're probably saying, how are we going to get these guys or whatever, and you know. So they come back out, and okay, boys, or whatever. I said, what do you guys, what do you want or whatever, like, you know. Well, we're going to get 2 lacrosse sticks, running shoes, and all that. And I'm saying, well, you know, we got a travel gas in our cars to win like gas now or whatever. But and anyway, I said, how about $25 a game? That wasn't bad then. Because Vancouver, I think they were 2 or 3 were making maybe a little bit more than that, and then there was 12 a game or whatever. Gil, he almost had a heart attack. So anyhow, okay, we'll talk it over. So they go back around the corner. It was funny. They came back. They could have gone around and come back right away. They don't want to make it look easy, right? Okay, that sounds good. Okay, you guys are Shamrocks now. I said, okay, thanks. We shake hands and whatever. So Billy Gray became a good friend of mine. He played for them then. He's a big 220-pound guy. He should have played football for Green Bay or something. Anyhow, he's going to school at UBC, take up a pile, do something, forget what it was then. So those guys were making $5 a loss, $10 a win, from what I can remember. And I don't think Range Dillon was up then. Maybe he came a year later or whatever. But Barry Ashby came. He played for Philadelphia in the National Hockey League. He came there the last year that we were there. Well, that would have been 64, yeah. And they had a good team, good goaltending, and whatever. But I used to feel bad because Billy, a good friend of mine now, and some of these other guys, when you're making that kind of money, that was pretty good money compared to 5 and 10 or whatever. I used to try to buy all the beer I could, because a case of beer is $2.52, $2.52 then. But Whitey Severson played that last year. He was making 50 a game, and Don was making 75 a game. And he was the playing coach. So, and we were offered fishing trips and this and that and whatever, but that was pretty special, because I thought, I'm not, Christ, I thought I was a Hollywood movie star. You know, I'm going, what the, you know, it was ridiculous. So I'd say that was the first one, and then playing with my buddies, and then playing for the Warlocks, eh? Those guys were something else, you know. You talk about, I always prided myself in being a good team guy. You know, the team comes first. And those guys, how disciplined they were, you know, and how they played, you know. It was like they were in the Marines or the Navy SEALs or whatever. They were like a machine. And great guys, great players. What they did and what they had to do. So that was a real experience for me to learn from them. So when I did get into coaching, I changed a couple of things, and but my philosophies, I learned a lot from that, and from Gimp, you know, how he did stuff and whatever, and he's such an easygoing guy, like, you know. And I was the captain of the team then, so when guys used to yap, and well, I would, you know, I had to remind them, doesn't matter if you're 10 times tougher than me, I ain't going to be listening to you. And he was so mild-mannered and everything, and guys like Barkley would think he was running the team or whatever. Well, he wasn't, I thought he should have been a lot stronger, but at the same time, his captains and whatever should be there looking after him too, you know. Because like I used to say, I'm not here to listen to you, I'm here to listen to the coach, you know. And here the guy still is with the kids, they're not kids, they're men, dedicating his life to it. I mean, the guy deserves a statue in Burnaby anyhow. But I'd say those were the, I've had a good year in scoring a couple of years, and I don't play in the power play, but really, if you don't win the whole thing. I had chances to play in the Mann Cup. Vancouver wanted to pick me up, and Chisholm, no way, you know. But it wouldn't have been the same, because I'd want to be with the guys, you know. So that was our big disappointment, especially for our fans too, eh? I mean, Saturday night in Coquitlam, you was lined up to have to hold the game up sometimes for 15, 20 minutes. And well, you know, New Westminster, and of course, Kerrisdale Arena wasn't bad, but only holds 2,000 or 1,800. But Memorial was the same thing in Victoria. And you had to come through the front door, and they had the fried onions and the popcorn going, eh? And you don't eat, and you walk through there, and you're smelling that smell and whatever. Guys want to make a left-hand turn. There's no way. No, never did. We got beat out by Morley Kell's team, and him and Bishop were kind of like the lacrosse gurus and the kings of running things back east and whatever. They had a real good team, and so did we. But they beat us out, and they came back here. And I can remember we came home early because I wanted to watch the series here. And they're playing the Salmon Bellies, and I forget who I talked to and whatever. And I said, I think New West is going to get beat. This team's too good. And Salmon Bellies won 4 straight. I couldn't believe it. Of course, I think the New Westminster had the goaltending, and I don't. Of course, they had the kids. I call the kids brought up in that, you know, because the next batch that came up was Don, your brother played on that team, and Kirkpatrick, and they had a pretty good team. Maybe their goaltending could have been better. They didn't have a guy like Como or Les Norman, somebody like that. I remember they had Strand was playing in the net, I think. He could throw the ball not bad, but the main guy who started all that was Merv Marshall that played for the Gales. So after they got beat up pretty good, not physically, but Minto Cups and whatever, I guess Strand got into throwing the ball, and then Pelzer, he was throwing the ball. So you got goaltenders here that could throw the ball not bad, but Merv Marshall was the original guy. Yeah, Dwight was a good goaltender, yeah. He was after my time there. because Al, I think Al was, Luthwaite was coaching Westminster, and he cut Pelzer, and so we had Evans and Pelzer. But if Evans still had a few more years left, 3 or 4 more years left, I would have drafted Bannister, because he was a pretty damn good goalie for New Westminster for a lot of years. But because Dave had a few years left, what was I going to do? And he'd been there from day one. I guess I let my heart get the best of me there. Well, I wouldn't have changed the guys I played with unless they were the Green Gales, and they're back east. I wasn't on the power play or a great goal scorer, so I can't remember anybody beating me for a goal that was important. I had to check guys like Parnell and whatever, and there's sometimes you get knocked out of the way or you don't get your check. It doesn't matter how good you are, you're going to get beat. But and I'm sure I got beat a few times, but I can't remember. I guess the most disappointing was the 68 year when we got beat by the Salmon Bellies. That was hard to take. Well, it was really tough. Paul Parnell has got a long shot. He can shoot from out far. So you had to pick him up, out farther. Trying to get the ball off him in the corner, he's got legs on him like tree stumps. He's better with his stick than I am. He was really tough, but he was a left-hander. So being me in a right-hander, I could take his shot away sometimes. If you're a right-hander checking a right-hander, like I used to have to check Sid Warwick, and I had to check him in junior. He's a couple of years older than me, but a couple of years against him in junior. He's got the long shot too, but now I got to cross my hands to check him, to take the shot away or change hands. And I'm better off with my forearm if he tries to make a move on one side and ward him off with my stick on this side. I'm not as strong with the left, and he is faster than me. So I used to have to get on him quick and pummel him. So he'd be more worried about me hitting him than he would about how am I going to get a shot away or what am I going to do, So different strategies for different guys. But definitely if I had sometimes through switches or you're backing up a guy and your guy is scared, he's out farther, then you can back up another guy and whatever. But I'm trying to say, well, John Davis is a right-hander too. But there's another guy I had to get on and pound him, Usually when I check, I try to pound you where it's going to hamper you a bit. Not maim you, but crotch of the arm or rib rubber or not here where the pads are, because you can bounce off or whatever. So different philosophies for different guys. Like Ranja Dillon, he's a left-hander, fast and stronger than normal, And yeah, you know who they are because you played with them all these years. You look at their bad habits or their good habits and try to see if you can take that away from them. Like checking beyond on the power play, and I'm always on the man short, and he charged through the middle. a lot of times. How are you going to check him? I reach out and chop him, you know. And hopefully he's, next time he's saying that guy, I'm going to let a shot go at his head or whatever, like, you know, because he doesn't want to get a chop in the chest anymore or whatever, right? Yeah, well, the guy is like huge, right?
Jack beyond it.
Yeah. I remember in Westminster, I seen him take the ball off the goalie and shoot it, and I forget who was in net in Westminster. Maybe it was Les Norman. It only dipped, hardly any, and he let it go. And he didn't have a big pocket in his stick. He let it go, and Norman flipped up his shoulder and made the save. Otherwise, it was going in the net. Lucky shot, but I mean the power, you know, and he didn't have the big wind up with, and his stick wasn't a deep pocket. So, yeah. I was in the back, so a lot of times too, like a guy named Billy Job, he wound up with his big wind up, and if you missed the net, you got it in your leg. You were hopping around a while for a couple of days. We're at a face-off, and Terry McKibben and I are on defense. And this is in 65 when the Adanacs, I think he was there 1 or 2 years, then we helped train and whatever. Anyhow, we're on the face-off thing, and I'm on one side and Terry's on the other side, and of course Whitey's on the floor. And he's always talking or chirping or, you know, to get you off your game or to be funny or whatever. Anyhow, it was funny. We got our sticks right on the ground there, and anyhow, the ball comes out right where Terry and Whitey is. Whitey steps in his stick. So here's McKibben, and he doesn't want his stick getting ruined. Not only that, he can't even move it, and he's like, what? Whitey grabs the ball, runs down and scores. He comes back to the face-off circle, and he gives McKibben a few tips on what to do on the line, and thanks him. McKibben, he was choked. Well, I couldn't stop laughing either. I'm saying, that old man beat you on the line? But no, I'm sure there are some things that, because I'm always business. As soon as we get on the line there, I'm telling, line up here, line up there. Don't be lining up on the outside of your man and giving that opposition the inside track to the net. Because at least if he's on the outside, you can push him to the outside, you know. So anyhow, and of course when Bodner and I first came up too, Bodner's about 220 and he hits a ton, 6'3" or whatever. They didn't call interference like they do now, and a guy like Gord Fredrickson, he was pretty good in face-offs. If he won the face-off, and sometimes even close to pick it up, we take turns on drilling him. So yeah, it'd be an interference while you get the ball. But after that, the guy's looking over his head all the time. You know, he's worrying who's going to hit him. So we used to have all our goofy little strategies, but still didn't win a Mann Cup. Well, you know, lacrosse is the toughest game probably there is, other than, I guess, football if you're getting tackled, but I mean, how many minutes do you play? I think basketball must be pretty tough on you. You know, guys that big and so agile, and you get hit and whatever, elbows, and you're going to the basket and whatever. And Hurley, that Irish game, I used to watch that on TV and go, holy, these guys, who cares where the ball is? It's like a field hockey team, and they hit you with that. They used to pack guys off in a stretcher. You know, in a game, it's nothing to see 2 or 3 guys go off in a stretcher. But I think the biggest thing about lacrosse, the highs and the lows, and you play in the summertime, it's hot, is the friends you make, they're friends for life. you know, that you meet, especially in lacrosse, because it is a tough game. And I've gone to places like the Mann Cup and been standing outside, and there's guys I've coached and guys that played maybe half a year and come up to me, Bill, how you doing, or whatever, and I'm going, Christ, I'm embarrassed. I don't know the guy's name. I'm scared to ask. Well, what's your name? And finally, I kind of stick handle around it, but sometimes I can't. This guy named John Katanchuk, in fact, his kid played junior in Burnaby, and I think he played for Vancouver maybe 1 year and became a fireman. But anyhow, he came up to me and was talking and whatever, and he said, I know you don't recognize me. And I said, yeah, no, I don't. Sorry. He says, John Katanchuk. I said, oh my God, you know, really? Well, we went to school together, you know, if he's a year younger or whatever, but Burnaby North, you knew anyway, it wasn't that big then, so you knew everybody, eh? But I've been lucky that way, I guess. I look old, but I look something like I used to, you know, so they recognize me. But from coaching and playing, I've had numerous people come up and thank me for coaching them, or talk about the playing days and whatever. Good to see you. I haven't seen you for 40 years or whatever it is. But how often does that ever happen, you know? So I would say, how can you beat that? Other than being healthy enough to still walk around, work. Like I've been building a house for 3-4 years now, and working every day, and I can still do it. My knees are bad, but I've had like rotor cuff operations, jaw, 4 broken noses, a couple hundred stitches, broken jaw, you name it, I've had it. But I can still, so I guess the big guy might like me a bit, I don't know, I'm still going. Yeah.